You're listening to the Journey podcast. Is there more to healing than just managing symptoms? Stay tuned for today's episode to get the details. This episode contains strong language and adult subject matter. Some listeners may be triggered by this content, and listener discretion is advised. Hi, I'm Petra Brunbauer, and with decades of experience with sadness, pain, anxiety, and stress, I finally figured out how to leave all that behind. And this podcast shows you how to break free permanently so you can reclaim your sanity and find the self-esteem and energy to go after the life you desire. With real talk about mental health, holistic healing, and the tough journey of coming out the other end. This is the Journey Podcast. Welcome to today's episode. In this episode, we dive into the complex and challenging journey of healing from chronic illness. Our guest shares her personal experiences and professional insights on the multifaceted approach needed to address chronic conditions. We explore the importance of looking beyond conventional treatments and embracing a comprehensive strategy that includes a variety of different approaches. Katie Rose Jones is a trauma-informed holistic therapist from the Welsh countryside in the UK. She is trained in Reiki, sound healing, NLP, trauma-informed inner work, and yoga, combining these modalities to guide others towards wholeness. Katie Rose has overcome a decade-long battle with chronic illness. She has lived in complete hopelessness, feeling like a shadow in the lives of those she loves. Understanding the pain of living with an invisible illness, Katie Rose has surpassed her own limiting beliefs about healing. She has transformed her journey of pain and despair into a beacon of hope for others. Beyond healing, Katie is the author of Chronically Awesome, Curing the Incurable, Giving ME the Middle Finger, Uncovering Trauma, and Awakening the Spirit. She's also a silversmith and artist, living a vibrant life with her husband and 2 teenage kids. When she's not empowering others, you'll find her on countryside walks or runs with her dog Dixie. Let's meet Katie Rose Jones. Hi, Katie. It's so great to have you on the podcast today. I've been looking forward to getting to speak with you today because healing chronic illness is such a relevant and important topic, and I really look forward to speaking with you today about that. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. And for starters, would you like to share a little bit about yourself and your journey, and let us know what happened and where you've come from and where that has taken you today?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was diagnosed with chronic illness, ME, or chronic fatigue syndrome, when I was 18. But previously to that, when I was 16, I had glandular fever. And it's like I just never fully recovered at that point because I was also an athlete at the time. So I was training quite a bit and I didn't like not training. It was also my safe space. It's where my friends were. So I just wanted to always be in that space. So probably in hindsight, I probably shouldn't have gone back as soon as I did. But we live as we do. So we have to move on. And I found that over the years, I started to get these symptoms. I was diagnosed at 18. I was actually at university at the time. But after 6 months, I dropped out. I was like, I can't do this on top of everything else that I am feeling. And I found that every year, I just seemed to get a new symptom. And I think now looking back, I was in Facebook groups with people who were also suffering because I was like, yes, these are my people. They understand. But the more that I was in them, the more that I found I was like, oh, they've got this symptom, they're diagnosed with this. And then all of a sudden I would have the symptom. So my unconscious mind has gone, okay, well, if I'm labeled with ME and they have that symptom, then I should have that symptom too. So it just naturally came out. And that happened just like all the time until I was like, I just can't be in these anymore. Like it's making me feel worse. So I actually left them all in the end. But I got to the point where one year I started getting these tremors, these muscle spasms. And that is when I would say my life went to shit, quite frankly. I had to learn how to live my life around things that I could not control. So beforehand, you get an idea of when you got anxiety, when you're feeling a bit depressed, when you've got pain, and I could adjust around that. But once I had the tremors, I didn't know when they would appear. So I could be out walking like in a street and all of a sudden my legs would just go. And if you're on your own, that's a sucker, because then you're like, what do I do? And it was one of the scariest things, so before I would leave the house, I would get extreme anxiety unless I was going with someone. And doing the school run was an absolute nightmare because my anxiety would get so bad before I'd left that I was triggering symptoms, tremors, spasms. The anxiety was bad, so I couldn't breathe properly, almost panic attack like. And over the years, I got to the point where I just felt like I was a shadow. I felt like I was just watching everyone live their lives while I just sat on the sofa, just, occasionally popping in, and then that's it. And I did literally live on the sofa at one point. It was the only place I felt sort of safe. It was my space where I knew I could actually relax. And because I lived in a state of fear nearly every day, because every time I moved, it could set off the tremors, I just never wanted to ever move. And my mental health declined massively at this point. I'd been through bouts of depression anyway, but this time round, it was like a whole other level. And I remember sitting on the sofa. Do you know that sort of, when did something change for you? And this was my moment of change. This was my rock bottom, also now known as a spiritual awakening. I just didn't know it at the time, but I was watching Netflix because that's what I did. I escaped into any film I could find. And I was sitting there and it was a bad day of tremors. So I really didn't want to move at all. I had the wheelchair next to me and I had like water, I had food, I had everything that I might need for that day because I was in the house on my own to be able to get through the day. And I was like, I don't know if I can do this anymore. I was like, what is the point? Like, literally, what is the point of me being here? Because like, I just felt like I didn't exist or I wasn't relevant in my kids' lives or my husband's life. So why? Just why? All that sort of frustration, anger, guilt as well. And I just sat there, and it's so hard to describe this moment. So I try my best, but it's like somebody was standing at the end of my sofa, but I couldn't see anyone. But it was like there was someone that, like a presence of some kind. And all I heard was, you were destined for so much more. And that was it. And I was like, well, fuck. Because it didn't come from anywhere outside of myself. It felt like it did, but it was my voice. It was in my head, but I felt it. And I felt it through my entire being. It was like, yes, absolutely. You are 110% correct. I am destined for more. And it was the first time in years that I had felt like that. Because at this point, I think I was diagnosed like 7 years before this point. So, and throughout that time, I just felt complete hopelessness. And that's where I was at. I just felt like there was no hope. I felt so alone. I felt like such a burden to my family. And that moment was like, it ignited something. And again, I didn't know what it was. I was just like, yes, you are correct. And I needed that because I think that would have been the absolute end otherwise. Get emotional. Like you do. And I needed something to hold on to. So it definitely ignited something within me. But then, do you know when you have that moment, but then you're like, well, now what? What am I supposed to do now? I need more. I need some bullet points, something. Give me something here to follow. And like the universe does, it provides always. And I was on Facebook and somebody came up on my Facebook page who also had ME. And she ran one of the ME groups. I didn't know this at the time either. And I started stalking her because that's my natural default, just stalk everyone. And she has since become my absolute bestie. She's my wifey and she's been on this journey with me. And I followed her taking these supplements, and I was like, let me just follow you. Let me just see what happens to you. You can be the guinea pig. And she was starting to feel better. She had energy. And I was like, what? And all she was doing was taking some fruits and veg in a capsule. And I was like, no, it cannot be that simple. But I was like, fuck it. I'm at a point now. I will try anything. I am sick and tired of being sick and tired. I have this newfound hope. And I was like, maybe this is it. Maybe. So I tried it and I was like, oh, I'll give it a couple of months, After a week, I was like, oh my God, I've got more energy. And I was like, no, it can't be this. And then my pain started reducing and I was like, oh, maybe there is something to this. And then I started to change my diet because I had some more energy. So I was like, if I'm going to use it, I might as well use it to help myself. So I started eating a hell of a lot better. No more like frozen cardboard, my pizza's just like straight out of the freezer. And my diet was horrendous. And I just kept getting better and better in like mental health as well. I wouldn't say I've gone from absolute like 0 to 100. It was just the best I'd felt in quite a while. And I was like, I will take that. And my energy level was up. So I was around my kids more, which was like an absolute godsend because I just felt like such a shit mum. Even when I reflect back, I'm like, was I there? Was I really there? Did I even do anything? Luckily, I do have pictures to prove that I was there. But I was just so detached from everything that it just didn't feel like I was there. I was so numb in those moments. And I started learning about nutrition then because I was like, why aren't doctors telling us this? Like, why are we not informed about any of this stuff? And I just went down a rabbit hole, let's be honest. I was like, I need to learn everything. I'm a chronic learner. If there's any possibility of being able to learn something, I'm like, yes, I'm not going to try it. I'm just going to learn it. And that was the start. That was something. I joined the company in the end because I was like, if I can help some other people, but it was more about helping myself, having something that I had something to get up for. That was for me. It wasn't getting up because I needed to live for my kids. I was getting up because I was doing something for myself. And that was, again, a new experience. I'd not really done that before. And from that point, that was the start. That was where I was like, okay, what else can I do? And I started to learn about the mind as in like how we talk to ourselves, being positive and things like that, reading self-help books. I was like, what's a self-development book? I was like, I don't understand what you're talking about when someone mentioned it to me. I was like, what? And then I started reading them and I was like, ooh, these are good. And then I just, again, was like, let me have more. Let me read more. But it was the first thing where I recognized that my internal voice was very different from my external voice because I was always told how positive I was, how well I dealt with everything. So I was like, yes, thanks. Yes, I'm doing very well. Thank you. But internally, I'm like, you shit. How are you even like lying here? You are going to have to crawl to the bathroom in a minute. This is your life. Really? Really? This is what we're doing? But nobody else knew those thoughts because how dare I ever express myself? And that's what I was battling. Even though to anybody else, I can slip on that mask, I can put so much humor into anything and survive. And I can make you believe me. No question. Yeah, I'm absolutely fine while I crawl across the floor. And I would make it into jokes with my kids. I would so I'd be, before I got a wheelchair, this was. So like, I would be crawling across the floor because the tremors had started. And my kids are like, oh, playtime. So they jump on my back. And my initial feeling was to shout at them. But then I was like, no, I'm not going to be that mum. So I'm like, yeah. And internally, I'm like, oh my fucking God, this is going to take so long to get to the bathroom. This is going to hurt later. But I would rather them have good memories like that than be like, yeah, mummy shouted at me all the time. I'm not going to lie. I totally was that mum as well. I would many, many times. But where I could notice it before I became that monster mum, I would do my best to switch it and make it enjoyable for them, even if it killed me internally. So it was a battle. It was very up and down in what I experienced. And there were good days. There was. And I think we forget that when we talk about things, that there were good days. There were days where the pain was less, the fatigue was less. I was around my kids more. But you tend to focus on the negative. It's where the mind goes, and that's what it remembers the most. So then it's harder to have those positive days because you're like, oh, I had one good day, but that won't last, because that's the belief that I had, and that's where I was living from.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that part of your journey with us and for being so vulnerable. I can hear in your voice just, thinking back to those times, how much that affects you. So thank you for sharing that and being open, because I feel like we don't talk enough about the real nitty gritty of chronic illness and chronic pain and what people actually go through on a day-to-day basis. Because like you said, I think we become very good at hiding it and showing a different side, sort of front facing. But what goes on internally is so powerful and so profound. So thank you for being very open about that and so honest about that. Now, you touched on a lot of really important things, and some of them were, the community part of feeling isolated, and also the internal dialogue that was going on while something else was being shown sort of to the outside world. And also that moment where you found hope, where you had that spiritual awakening, as you were saying. And at the time, of course, you didn't know that, but looking back, that's what that was. Now, during this time that you were challenged with this chronic illness, and you said, you reached a point where had that not happened, you might not be here today. So how did you face every day? How did you move forward every day? And a lot of people, they may end up having a spiritual awakening, but they may not. So is there something that you can tell listeners that might be at that point that you were at, where they're like, I can't keep going? How do I face the next day?
Yeah, I would say for me as well, I actually, because I don't have a very good sort of experience with doctors through my journey, it has been very up and down. I have felt very sort of gaslit, I suppose, in what I was experiencing and feeling. I've had doctors say that they don't believe in ME, and I'm like, okay, that's fine. Tell me what it is then. I was like, fix me. I don't care what it is. Label it something else. So long as you can tell me that you can make me better. And I never got that. If anything, I changed the doctor's belief, and they were like, oh, yes, I re-diagnosed you with ME. I'm like, oh, for fuck's sake. And when I was in that sort of worst place, I also then started to seek help. I actually went to the doctors and said, I'm not okay. And they wanted to put me on antidepressants, and I refused because I had been on antidepressants after my daughter with postnatal depression. I didn't have a good experience. I felt like a zombie. And let's be honest, chronic illness, you literally feel like a zombie every day anyway. So my fear was to feel even more like that and literally not function at all. And so I said no. And eventually they agreed for me to go to counseling. So that was the first step, to literally ask for help. And when you think of like themes of consciousness, or the filter that you see the world in, the lens that you're viewing the world in, chronic illness, you tend to be stuck in hopelessness. You are stuck in that phase of feeling numb and like all hope is lost. You're like, this is it forever. These are the thoughts that swirl around your head all the time. So your belief is that there is no getting better, that this is it. It's not going to improve. And I've been there. I've been that person, and closed my mind to any possibility that I could ever get better. And by taking that step of asking for help outside of myself was the first step to then take control of my life again. And going to counseling, so I put this in my book, is like, I wish I'd been more open and honest. Like I 100% closed down on so many things because I had a fear of judgment. And I know it's a safe space. I know all of this, but my programming within me is like, you cannot tell people that. No, you cannot tell them you cut yourself. No, you cannot tell them you have suicidal thoughts. No, we do not do this. So I do kick myself now that I wasn't as, so if anyone is ever going to counseling or doing anything like that, my first thing is like, just lay it all out there. They are there to help you. And the more honest you can be, the easier it is for yourself in the long run. But I would also, with the counselor, put on a mask, humor all the way through. I'm like, yeah, but it's fine. And I'd even get him laughing. I'm like, oh, winning. I've made him laugh. Like I was taking everything and putting it outside of myself instead of facing what was really going on. And I did learn that even though I thought I had accepted ME, I thought I'd accepted it all, what I actually discovered was that I didn't accept it at all. I had just made it my identity instead. And I had lost myself entirely to it. And I no longer knew who I was. So you're in that sort of identity crisis then, because I'm no longer the person I was beforehand. And now I'm just making myself ME so that then there is nobody else. There's no other version possible to that version of Katie. So yeah, definitely seek help first. And sometimes it's just speaking out to your friends and family, but I do recommend professionals where possible. And from that point, you can start to heal. And it doesn't have to mean like expecting yourself to fully heal by a few sessions. It's about going, okay, well, maybe there's a possibility here for something more. Because I never set out on my journey to fully heal myself. I set out for a little bit of energy. It's all I wanted, a little bit of energy, be around my kids a bit more, be able to function a little bit better. You know, it'd be nice to actually remember things, you know, instead of, oh, you didn't tell me. And then someone go, yeah, I did like 5 times. And you're like, oh, maybe you did. That's a hard one. The brain fog, all that side of stuff, because it's like you're just floating around the world. Like you're just not in it. You're just not present. And practicing, practices, build in some practices into your day. Don't make it complicated. Do a 5-minute meditation. Do a 2-minute breathing technique. We overcomplicate everything. I really do believe that we overcomplicate everything. And it's because we're told it's not that easy. When you're told you can't cure ME, then you're like, well, but I can't just do like a breathing technique and feel better. Oh, I can't just listen to a meditation and feel better. Yeah, you can. Yeah, you can. Have you tried it? Like, that's the thing. Because I would be like, no, that won't work. I would write everything off, but I'd never tried it. I was like, what? Don't be so silly. It's not that easy. Do you know that you cannot cure this? Like, that was where I was living from. They were my inner thoughts on a constant. And it's just crazy now when I think about it now. And I'm like, oh my God, why did nobody just give me a good shake it and tell me there was a possibility for more on the other side?
I think that's kind of the scary part of it, is that once that gets put in our heads, and be that by society or social media or even by medical professionals who tell you, I'm sorry, there's no way this will get cured, that those beliefs actually become part of our identity and they then determine how we move forward. So it sounds like you made a lot of really important discoveries on this journey, one of them being this power that our beliefs can hold over whether we think we can succeed in helping ourselves or not. And also, you mentioned something really interesting when we chatted before the recording, that a lot of it comes down to unresolved emotions. A lot of the stuff that is stuck in us and that causes physical symptoms are unresolved emotions. So how did you come to those insights? Were those things that came up through therapy and counseling, or did you arrive at these insights some other way?
I felt like I did this myself, but at the same time, I definitely knew there was more. Do you know, it's like it was there, but I was like, oh, I'm not digging into that. That's too much. That's hard work. So we've always said, so for me personally, like my mum and dad got divorced or getting divorced. When I found this out when I was 15, and the fallout around it, that was my trauma. That was where everything got triggered. This is where everything for me got internalized, because in our family, we didn't talk about our emotions. I didn't know how to name an emotion. I could do the very basic, oh, happy, oh, sad, that sort of thing. But I couldn't really say anything more than that. I didn't know that that was even a thing. Like, I didn't know there was more, because I've never witnessed it. I've never seen it. We never taken time out as a family to discuss anything. And like, especially negative emotions, like that was just never really got into any of that as a child. And so the fallout that was happening, and it was, so my dad didn't actually move out for, I don't know specifics, because again, when trauma happens, everything becomes a blur, or you forget things entirely. But I think he must have stayed for about maybe 2 years or so, something like that. And so I was living in this sort of chaos in a way. And there was no outlet. There was no one to talk to. I didn't know I needed to talk either, because I'm 15. I didn't know that that's what was brewing. I didn't know that's what I needed to do. So I internalized absolutely everything. I would have conversations with my parents, but in my head, never out loud. They were all in my head. They would answer me back in my head. I would then answer them back in my head. I'd scream, I'd shout, I'd be so angry at them, but I never resolved anything because I never actually dealt with it. I never processed anything in a healthy way. And I never had any conversations with my parents either. So, and I held a lot of anger towards my dad because he'd had an affair. So this is the initial sort of triggering point, but it made me question myself, because growing up, it was so drilled into us that you behave, you don't tell lies, and just the standard sort of things. But then to find that out, I was like, you're undoing everything that you've instilled into me. So how can I believe you now? How can I believe myself? So there was all of these thoughts and feelings that, again, not conscious about any of this at the time, but there was just so much bubbling up that was just never dealt with. So over the years, because I felt invisible in my home, I developed an invisible illness. And I was like, when I figured that out, that was only a few years ago, I figured that out. And I was like, oh my God, I see it now, because I believed I was invisible. I felt unloved because I wasn't having the attention that I felt I needed at that time. But as an adult now, I fully understand that my mum and my dad were going through their own shit, and they had to deal with their own things, and they had to survive because they had a lot going on and they didn't know how to process their own emotions. But as that 15-year-old, I felt abandoned. And that is the trauma that has lived through my body ever since. And it was never dealt with because we didn't know about trauma then, or I didn't anyway. And when I went to like counseling and all the sort of neurologists and things like that, they would all mention like my dad and things, but nobody really sat down and explained, okay, so what we're seeing here is very natural, it's very normal, especially for a child whose brain isn't fully developed yet, to be feeling these feelings, going through all this, and now coming out in physical symptoms. No one took the time to explain how trauma can affect the body. And so instead, they made me feel like I was overreacting, that I was making it up, that I was being dramatic, or I was lazy. I wanted an easy life, because they never saw the truths behind closed doors of what I was really living with. So, yes. And as I've gone on my journey and I've uncovered all of this, I do not doubt that everything comes back to trauma, whether it's a big trauma or a small trauma, because there's a wide variety out there. And we're just living in it, and we're living it because we take on whatever we grew up with. So I grew up not knowing how to express my emotions. So then as I've got older, become a parent, my daughter now doesn't know how to express her emotions because it gets passed on. So now as I do my work, I'm trying to help her to understand like these different emotions, that there's different names for things, that, as you tune into your body, it'll give you an idea of something. But she's 14. She's 14. So, her brain isn't fully developed. She's not at that point to even understand all this. So all I can do is practice myself and let her see me trying my best, so that hopefully in time she'll go, oh, I remember when mum used to do stuff like that. Maybe I'll give that a go. Because at the minute she just shuts it down. She's like, oh, no.
Typical teenager.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm curious about what kind of practices you discovered. So you said now you're doing the work after you had those insights. And What kind of practices do you use now to start processing these traumas and these emotions in a way that's healthy for you and that helps you heal? What have you found?
Oh, so many things. I have tried so many. I started with like Reiki and tarot cards as well, and oracle decks and things like that. I loved it. That was where I started my spiritual practice to delve into something more. Because I've always believed in something. I just didn't have a name for it. I didn't know what it was. My whole thing was everything happens for a reason. That's what I've always lived by since I can remember. I didn't know why I thought that. I don't know where it came from. I just believed it, but I never actually delved into anything spiritual. It just naturally came about, and I became obsessed. Is all I can say. Is I was like, okay, what else is there? And I was just learning literally I was like, I wanted to know what the colors meant, what the numbers meant, what each angel was. I needed as much information as I could give myself to it was almost like an armor in a way when I think about it, because I needed to know these things so I could feel connected to something. So anytime I saw a color, I instantly felt connected spiritually. So I felt better, which is like, it's so hard to explain unless you kind of feel it yourself and go through it. It's definitely a hard one to like go, because I would have been the person before this rolling my eyes like, ugh, here we go. So I fully get it. If anyone's ever like that, I'm like, yeah, I know, it's okay. It's okay. Give yourself a chance. Just give it a go. So yeah, so I started with like the Reiki and the cards and things like that. I started a business doing readings and things because I just loved the feeling that I got by connecting spiritually. It gave me a boost into something bigger than myself. So for years, it'd all been about me, because obviously it's the ego, it's all about me. And then after that, it was like I connected to something so much bigger. And all of a sudden, I saw the world bigger, whereas my world had been so small before this. So the possibility of there being more was like, ooh, this is interesting. So then I went on and I went and did yoga was the first thing I did physically that I could do without payback, which was the biggest thing. I needed to be able to do something when I started to get a little bit better from tremors, or on a good day. I needed something for myself that I felt empowered by. And yoga, you can make it as gentle as you want. Like, I just love that it's basically just taking time out to sit in silence. It's essentially what you're doing, and tuning into your body and just feeling things. I learned how to breathe correctly. Didn't know you could breathe incorrectly. So that was a powerful one. And I had to really focus through my days then just to check in on how I was breathing, because I would naturally revert to the old way. And it really is a practice. It's something you have to put a conscious effort into. I also tried mitochondrial therapy. That was a really good one for me. So mitochondria, they are the powerhouses of energy in your body. And my body didn't have power. So I was like, okay, what is this? And it was the first thing I ever did where I got a piece of paper that said, yes, your body is not functioning properly. Because all my other tests were normal, never came back with anything out of the ordinary. But this piece of paper told me my nervous system was completely screwed up and it needed some serious attention. So that was my focus for a while, was just focusing on what can I do for myself in knowing that there was something wrong. I think that was a powerful thing to say, oh, I'm not making it up, because you do doubt yourself. The more people that tell you these things, you start to go, oh, maybe I am being a bit dramatic. Maybe I am a bit lazy. So from there, I started to walk again. I had so much energy. I was able to trust my body to go for a walk. I cried every time I went for a walk because it was so incredible to be able to be doing it. I looked like a right idiot walking down the road, but it was just, I couldn't help it. All these tears came out and I was like, oh my God, I'm so amazing. And then I was like, okay, what's next? Because I was like, I've got something here, but I need more. Because that's the thing. I only wanted a bit of energy. Well, I got that, but now I wanted more. I was getting greedy. I was like, yes, what else? So I went into sound healing, which I am obsessed with. I have so many sound instruments. I absolutely love it. I love that you don't have to go into the context of things, that you can just feel, and the sound does the healing for you. And as somebody that doesn't want to, like, will avoid at all costs, like back then, to do the inner work and actually look deeper, this was a perfect way of shifting energy, moving something that I didn't have to necessarily know exactly what it was. But if I wanted to cry, I could just cry because it's making me want to. Just feel what's there rather than judging it, kind of trying to pick it apart and decide where it's coming from and what it is. It was, and also it just relaxes the body, which was like a godsend to me because my body was so used to being stuck in that fight or flight mode, but also the tremors and that side of stuff. It was like my body was constantly switched on, ready to fight. And so that was I do anything I can add in a bit of sound to, I will. And then I went into NLP because I had a bad experience with the neurologist that I went to, and it closed me off from any possibility of learning about the mind. But as my time went on, and I met a doctor who just took some time to actually fucking listen to me and made me feel seen. And I was like, I was in there less than 10 minutes probably, but I felt like the biggest, like, it was like my whole world had shifted in that 10 minutes, because he just explained like, oh, okay, so what seems to be happening is the messages from your brain going to your body are just a bit, your wiring is slightly off here. Like there's something that is not quite processing properly. And I was like, oh, well, I can understand that. I remember biology. I remember some of that. And then I went on diazepam, which helped to relax the body. And then that was the first thing that I was like, oh, okay. So there's something with the mind here. So eventually I went into the NLP side of things, and let me tell you, absolute game changer. Like I went again, I didn't go to a session. Like, you know, most people go, oh, you try it out first before you train in it. Not me. I turned up, I was like, I'm training in it. And the first day I realized that I had still been identifying myself as Emmy. It was in all my bios and on my social media. Everything was associated around it. And I was like, no wonder I'm still the way that I am, that I couldn't get past that sort of barrier. So I took it off all my social medias. And the next day in the training, we had to change a belief. And the belief that I went with was, if I overdo it in some way or another, I will be poorly in some way or another. Because this is what I told myself. If I do this, oh shit, I'll suffer for that tomorrow. Oh, if I do that one too many things, oh, I'll suffer for that tomorrow. And so I went with that, and I just changed it to I'm invincible. Because, you know, why not? And I cried going through this process. It only took like 20, 30 minutes. But I can tell you, I've never had my symptoms since. It was that powerful. And my mum couldn't believe it because she's been with me through my whole journey. And she was like, it was both of us. We were just speechless for days. We're like, and I was like, it's going to kick in soon. I'll have a symptom soon, surely. But it was like nothing, just nothing. And I was like, well, who would have thought the mind was that fucking powerful? And then I was like, why don't the doctors know this? Why aren't they doing this? Why aren't they giving you sort of referrals to somebody that can really work in the programming of the mind, to even teach you the programming of the mind so you can understand your symptoms better and why they're appearing and how they may be appearing? And yeah, so that is just an absolute cracker of one. But I found that it didn't deal with the emotions. It did the mind, it did the programming, it did that side. It's like it left out the body. And even though physically I was fine, mentally and emotionally, it was like I still had, it's like a bit of a ping pong ball situation going on in my body of just feeling so many emotions all over the place. And I went to do a yoga teacher training course, and they focused on inner work. And I was like, okay, I think these are my people. I think this is where I'm going to go. And they had a book. So I read the book and I was like, oh, well, now I'm obsessed. I also stalked them on the Instagram because, again, natural stalker me. And I did their course, and it was like the final piece. It was like everything fell into place in that last connection of really fully connecting that mind, body, spirit. It's like I'd done the spirit first, Then I went on to the mind, and then this was me going on to the body, really truly feeling the body, the emotions, the senses that we are feeling every single day that we ignore, the information that we are being given every single day that we ignore, that we push down and go, oh, I'll do that tomorrow. Or it's so uncomfortable that you're like, oh, put that in a box, shove it down deep. I don't want to do that one. So that was my sort of final piece. And from that point on, I've just been obsessed with basically everything that I trained in and just bringing it all together so that it is one instead of separating them, to get people to this point quicker when you start to see everybody as a whole instead of these individual symptoms or these individual, like just the mind, just the body, just the emotion. No, put it all together and then see what you come out with.
That sounds really amazing. And you do work with clients with this approach. So if our listeners are curious at this point and they want to connect with you, what kind of programs and services do you offer, and how could our listeners work with you?
Okay, so I have a book called Chronically Awesome, because I'm awesome. And so I always say that I always go to a book first if somebody's written a book, because I'm just curious about the person. And again, it's my stalker vibes. And I just like to know how I can open my mind a bit before I dive in sometimes, because I will go and train in it rather than go into the session sometimes. So that's always a great place to start if you're really like, if you were where I was, where you want something, but you're like, I'm not ready to actually actively put loads of work in yet, like get me to that point. That would be my first place. But in terms of actually working with me, I do one-off sessions for people who are a lot more sort of cautious. Maybe they're just getting into this side of stuff and they're like, oh, I don't know. So I do one-off sessions in that way, or you can just go full in with my healing package. So it's Hope Light Healing. And this is where we do a set amount of sessions. There's 3 sessions. There's 2 personalized meditations and 2 personalized sound baths, because I work with it and I work to the person I'm working with. I don't go, okay, so this is what I do, and now I'm going to put that on you, because it doesn't work like that. Everyone is different and everyone is in different place when they come to me. So I meet the person wherever they are, and we set a plan together that they feel comfortable with. And then we work to the energy that they're in at that moment. And that's how I do my meditations in the sound bath, is to align with what we've been kind of bringing up, dealing with. To sometimes it's just clearing out shit, isn't it? It's just that energetic. You've brought stuff up, but you want to really let it out of the energy systems. So that is why I like to do, especially the sound, I think is fantastic for that. And the meditations, I just think are so good for people in taking that time for themselves to quiet the mind. And I do it as a journey, because then I'm taking you somewhere that I think is where you need to be, that you can't quite get yourself there. So the journey that I provide for you gets you there, but it also gets you questioning things when I do my meditations as well. I like to really get people feeling in them. And then when they come back, they've got a completely different feeling than when they started. And that to me is the most important thing. Like, do you feel better after my sessions? Because that's my aim. My aim is, you can't just heal in a day. Honestly, if we could, we'd all be doing it. But by taking the time to go, yes, I can get you there, but you've got to put in the work as well, is my key thing. You have to put in the work. I will give you all these things. I will take you through the sessions. I will create personalized things for you, but you have to put in the work. You have to learn the language of your body, because I don't know your language. I know mine, and I can give you hints on what mine is. I can tell you what I feel, but that doesn't mean that's going to equate to you. So you have to learn your own body's language, and it takes time. And that's why you have to put the work in. But also, I think it's really important to be honest with yourself. Like, you don't have to be honest with me, so long as you're being honest with yourself. And when you go from my sessions, and sometimes you get moments, don't you, where you're like, oh, well, that feels uncomfortable now. Oh, I've got this, I've got that. That's when you need to message me. That's when you come back and go, I am feeling this now. Okay, cool. Well, let's do this then to process it. I'll give you some questions, work through it. I can, again, give you things, but you still have to identify them. You still have to feel them and take yourself on your own journey, because it's the empowerment of it to know that you can do it. I'll hold your hand, but you have to show up for yourself. So yes, they're my main things. And you can always find me on Instagram chatting away to myself on my Insta stories.
Sounds amazing. And Katie also has her own podcast called Chronically Awesome, and you can listen in from your favorite podcast provider. And we, of course, will be linking to all of Katie's offerings in the show notes as well. So be sure to check there on how you can find her podcast, how you can find her book, which is being released on July 19th, and how you can connect with her if you have felt inspired by this episode, or you are also struggling with chronic pain, chronic illness, and you'd like to chat with her and work with her. We will put all of that information in the show notes for you. Well, this has been another incredible episode, and I really hope our listeners have enjoyed our journey into healing chronic illness as much as I have. It has been such a pleasure just listening to you talk about your journey and what you have discovered, and this profound wisdom that you are now offering to other people as well. So thank you so very much for spending this time with me, Katie, and talking to our listeners and creating this wonderful episode with us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it has been such an enlightening conversation, and I really, really appreciate everything that you have been through, and that you're now taking all of that and making a positive change in the world and bringing healing to other people. So thank you so much for the work you do, and thank you for coming on and chatting with us today, and take really good care of yourself.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to listen in. If you enjoy the Journey podcast, please support us by subscribing, sharing on social media, and leaving us a review. We appreciate you. And you can find more of The Journey on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and our website, thejourney.com. Sending you love and courage, and see you next time.